The Zerethian Empire stretched across half a spiral arm of the galaxy, its banners flown on more worlds than any other starfaring civilization. Its people believed themselves unassailable. Their rulers descended from the celestial line, chosen by fate and fire to guide them eternally. At the center of it all was Queen Elsera, last of her line, luminous in bearing, revered as something between monarch and deity. She was untouchable, at least. She had always been, until the dagger. It happened during what should have been an ordinary ceremonial procession. A lone assassin, a half-shadow moving faster than her guards, had cut through the protective field. With a weapon older than memory, an energy-forged blade laced with venom. It grazed her side, shallow but malicious. The wound refused to close, stubbornly resisting every art the Zerethian healers applied. Their science was advanced beyond comprehension, their rituals perfected over millennia, and yet the venom clung to her cells, like tar, spreading unseen at first. The court insisted she would recover, that their rituals only needed time, but days turned into weeks, and the queen's vitality waned. The glow of her crystalline skin dimmed. For the first time in recorded history, whispers spread that the celestial line might end not through conquest, through a single poisoned cut. It was then that a name surfaced, not Zerethian, but human. Marcus Hale. Humans were tolerated. Within the Empire, though, barely. They were regarded as unpredictable, reckless, even crude. Their homeworld was a classified death world, a planet so hostile to life that most civilized species considered its inhabitants little more than animals dressed in flesh. But there was one thing humans had earned grudging recognition for: survival. Their biology thrived where others faltered, and their medics were infamous for healing in impossible conditions with impossible methods. It was out of desperation, it's not respect, that Marcus Hale was summoned to Mirrodin, the crystalline citadel. Of the queen, he entered the queen's chamber under the watch of 20 guards and twice as many suspicious eyes. The chamber itself was awe-inspiring walls of living crystal pulsed faintly with the queen's life. A fusion of architecture and spirit. At its center lay Elsera herself, half reclined on a throne bed, her form weakened but still majestic. Her golden eyes pierced him, as though she already knew every thought in his head. "Human," she said, her voice carrying the faintest edge of strain. "They tell me you heal by touch. That your hands are crude but persistent." Marcus bowed, stiffly. He was no courtier, no diplomat, just a field medic who had patched too many soldiers in trenches back on Earth. "I'll do what I can, Majesty," he said. "But I'll need freedom to work. No rituals, no interference." The Zerethian healers bristled, their robes swishing like angry wings. To heal the queen without ceremony was heresy. To lay hands upon her directly was unthinkable. But Elsera, perhaps from desperation, or perhaps from curiosity, gave a slight nod. "Then work, and let us see if humanity's arrogance is more than noise." Marcus set to it, his hands steady, though his heart thundered. He sterilized his tools, prepared his sealants, and carefully exposed the wound. It was strange alien. Physiology always was, but wounds were universal in their language. The flesh resisted, the venom seeping like ink. But he worked methodically, treating not just the injury but the body around it. He was almost finished when it happened. A bead of antiseptic slipped from his tool, sliding down her skin. His reflex was automatic. His gloved hand shot out to catch it. Pressing directly against the queen's side, the room froze. The healers gasped, some drawing back as though lightning had struck. Guards' weapons hissed to life, aimed squarely at him. Touching the queen was not just forbidden, it was treason, punishable by immediate execution. Marcus's heart leaped into his throat. He pulled his hand back, ready to stammer out an apology that wouldn't matter. This was it, his mistake would be remembered as the foolish end of a human who dared breach sacred law. But before a command could be given, Elsera inhaled sharply. Not in outrage, but in something else. Her eyes widened, her breath caught. She placed her own hand near the wound, feeling it herself. The pain that had haunted her for weeks seemed to ebb, if only slightly. Her gaze snapped to Marcus. "You touched me. she whispered, not accusing but wondering. He swallowed hard. I slipped. Reflex. It wasn't supposed to. And yet, she said, her voice softer now. For the first time, the venom recoiled the hours after. The slip passed like a slow-drawn blade. Marcus half expected to be dragged into the execution halls before dawn. He remained in his guest chamber under guard, replaying the moment over and over. He could still feel the warmth of the queen's crystalline skin beneath his palm. The room had gone silent with shock, but instead of shouting for his death, Queen Elsara had dismissed the others. That dismissal alone was a break in protocol that echoed through the citadel like thunder. The queen had been touched, yet the offender still breathed. The guards were unsettled, the healers furious, and the council, those ancient voices of Zarethian law, were already in uproar. Marcus lay awake, his medical kit beside him, wondering if he had already doomed not just himself, but humanity's fragile relationship with the Zarethian Empire. Earth was tolerated, not trusted. To them, humans were rough-edged upstarts, barely out of their caves. One misstep could see them ostracized, or worse, enslaved under the guise of containment. And he, a single medic, had supplied the greatest misstep imaginable. The following evening, a summons came. 2 guards escorted him back to the queen's chamber. The hallways felt different, colder, hung with the whispers of courtiers and servants who stared openly at the human passing in their midst. The air was thick with suspicion. The silence between the guards weighted like stone. The chamber was dimly lit when he entered, a sharp contrast to the dazzling brilliance he had first seen. Queen Elsara reclined once more, though less regally, her strength still ebbing. The wound had not worsened, but neither had it healed. She gestured, and the guards withdrew. For the second time, they were alone. Her eyes, luminous and alien, settled on him with unnerving directness. You touched me, Marcus stiffened. He bowed slightly, careful to keep his hands at his sides. It was a mistake, Majesty. My reflex acted before my mind, and yet she interrupted, her voice calm but sharp as a blade's edge. For the first time since the dagger struck, the pain lessened. Marcus blinked. He hadn't imagined her reaction. Something had truly shifted. That's impossible, he said before thinking. My hand shouldn't have, no. Her tone carried a finality that silenced him. Your people are Deathworlders. Your kind survives storms that shatter continents, creatures that devour without mercy, and climates no civilized species would dare inhabit. Perhaps your bodies carry a resonance. Something in your flesh that unsettles this venom. He frowned, half wanting to laugh at the idea, half too awed to dismiss it. Humans had long been the butt of alien jokes, primitive brutes who conquered their own lethal world by accident. But here was the Queen of Zareth suggesting that his touch had value where their finest arts had failed. For a moment, the chamber was quiet, then Elsara's tone shifted, softer. Tell me, human, Marcus Hale, how would you heal me without your rituals? Without our laws binding your hands? The question stunned him. He had been trained to work with what he had: tools, knowledge, improvisation. But to be asked how he would heal her, as if his methods had authority in this place, was beyond comprehension. He answered carefully. I'd need repeated treatments. Pressure to stimulate resistance. Perhaps draw the venom out by force, cell by cell. It wouldn't be elegant. It wouldn't look like your healer's rituals, but it might. Work. Elsara considered his words, then tilted her head in a gesture halfway between curiosity and command. Then do it. Not as ritual as you. And so, night after night. Marcus returned, cleaned, pressed, applied his crude Terran medicines. And most shocking of all, he touched her skin directly when needed. Each session carried risk. Guards watched with hands hovering over weapons. At each time, the Queen ordered them away. In those private hours, something else unfolded. Marcus talked. He told her about Earthnot in the polished, sanitized way. Diplomats spoke of their homeworld, but honestly, he described the rolling seas, wild storms that could flatten entire cities, mountain ranges that killed the unprepared, and forests that teemed with predators. At first, Elsora listened with the polite detachment of a monarch indulging a subject. But soon, she leaned closer, her eyes brightening with a hunger Marcus had not seen before. No one in her empire dared speak to her without reverence or fear. No one told her stories stripped of ceremony, yet this human who had already broken the greatest taboo spoke as though she were not a goddess, but a patient who needed comfort. By the third week, the venom's hold had weakened. The wound that once resisted every attempt now began to close, slowly but visibly. The queen's strength returned, and with it came rumors. They say the queen favors the human. They say she lets him touch her. What spell has he cast upon her? The council chamber was carved from living crystal. Vast spires arching like frozen lightning above thrones older than the empire itself. Here, laws were shaped, decrees handed down, and monarchs themselves restrained by tradition. The air hummed faintly, alive with the voices of centuries. It was in this chamber that Marcus's crime was dissected with venom, sharper than any assassin's blade. The High Chancellor. Viren rose to his full height, his robes cascading like molten glass. "We are disgraced," he thundered, his voice amplified by the crystalline walls. A human, a death worlder, an ape has laid hands upon the queen, and still walks among us. Shall the celestial line now accept grubby fingers as holy right? Shall we abandon millennia of order for one primitive's accident? Murmurs echoed across the chamber, voices layered in outrage and disbelief. Some counselors pounded their scepters against the floor in agreement. Others muttered more cautiously, weighing the winds of change at the center. Queen Elsera sat upon her throne, her posture regal despite her lingering weakness. Golden eyes blazed, but her expression was unreadable. She allowed the outrage to pour forth, knowing that silence was often the most potent weapon. When the storm of voices finally dulled, she spoke. "You speak of disgrace, Chancellor. Yet, tell me who among you healed me? Who among you halted the venom's spread when your rituals failed?" The chamber rippled with unease. "None," she continued, her voice sharpening. "Your arts, your ancient rites, all failed. It was this human, this Marcus Hale, who brought relief when all others faltered. Is survival disgrace?" Barin's eyes narrowed. "Majesty, you mistake coincidence for cure. This man's fumbling hands happened to buy time, nothing more. Already, our people whisper that you are soiled by his touch." That word sent a hiss through the chamber. Soiled. To the Zerithians, the celestial line was pure essence, untouchable except through ritual. To be touched without sanction was sacrilegious, of course. The queen herself decreed otherwise. Elsora leaned forward, her voice dropping, cold as frost. "Careful, Chancellor. Words can draw blood sharper than blades, and you forget yourself. I decide what honors or soils this throne. It was a dangerous moment. Tradition demanded the council bow to her will, yet centuries of custom emboldened them to resist in whispers and shadows. A line had been drawn between a queen willing to embrace the unorthodox and a council desperate to preserve their grip through ritual and fear. After the session, the chamber emptied into hushed corridors. There, the whispers turned darker. He bewitches her. She gazes at him as though he were more than a healer. If this continues, humanity will claim influence over the throne itself. Some spoke of exile. Others, more brazen, whispered of elimination, not of Marcus, but of Elsora herself. If the queen chose to undermine their traditions, perhaps her reign had reached its end. Marcus, meanwhile, was unaware of the exact scale of fury boiling in those halls, though he sensed enough to feel uneasy. It had not meant to become a symbol. Yet every glance from a courtier now carried sharp edges. Servants avoided him. Guards watched him with hands twitching near their weapons. He began to sleep with a scalpel tucked beneath his pillow knot for surgery. But for survival, it was during one of his late-night treatments that Marcus finally voiced his fear to the queen. "They hate me," he said bluntly, pressing a sealant over the edges of her wound. "Your council, your healers, half your court. I'm not a healer to them. I'm corruption. Don't. If they don't kill me outright, they'll use me to drag you down. Elsura studied him, her face calm, even as his. Rough hands worked, then she surprised him with a small, almost wry smile. Do you think me blind, human? I know their whispers. I hear their plots. But let them hiss in shadows. It does not change what I have seen. What have you seen? He asked, meeting her gaze. Her golden eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. That your touch carries no fear of me, no reverence, no calculation. You treat me not as a goddess, not as a throne, but as a person who bleeds. No one in this empire remembers what that feels like. Her words struck him harder than he expected. He had not thought of himself as anything but a medic doing his duty. Yet to her, that very lack of ceremony was revolutionary. And so, despite the council's fury, she summoned him again and again. Each time he entered her chamber, each time his hands worked with clumsy precision, a bond deepened. Not the bond of healer and patient, nor of subject and monarch, but something stranger. Something the Zerithians could neither define nor control. But, while their bond grew in secret, the council's fury festered in the open. Already, some counselors began to gather allies. Already, weapons were smuggled into the citadel under false pretenses. The failed assassination had been only the beginning, and Marcus Fu, he could not see the full web, began to notice the shadows stretching longer across the crystal halls. He was no warrior, no diplomat, but he was a human. An instinct told him one truth. When predators circled, blood would follow. The citadel of Mirrodin was alive with light as the ceremonial bells rang, their tones resonating across crystal walls. Dignitaries and counselors gathered for the renewal, a centuries-old ritual meant to reaffirm the Queen's divine bond with the Empire. But beneath the shimmer of tradition, traitors waited in silence. Marcus stood just behind Queen Elsaris. Thrown his position as healer turned attendant, raising more suspicion than respect. His presence at the rite was itself an insult to many, but Elsara had insisted. If venom lingers, she had told them coldly, I will not risk my healer's absence. None dared contradict her aloud, though Marcus felt daggers in every glance. The ritual began. Zerithian choirs sang in harmonic waves, their voices layered like crystal chords. Priests circled the queen, tracing glowing runes in the air. Elsara sat regal, her wound hidden beneath layers of ceremonial cloth. To all appearances, she was every inch the eternal monarch. But Marcus, watching closely, saw the tension in her fingers. She was not yet whole. The venom resisted, clinging stubbornly. That weakness, he realized too late, was what the conspirators had been waiting for. The first strike was subtle, a guard, one of her own sworn protectors, shifting position a fraction too close. Marcus noticed the flicker of steel and energy blade concealed beneath his cloak. Instinct honed on battlefields, where hesitation meant death, surged. Down. Marcus shouted, shoving Elsara from her throne just as the blade arced where her neck had been. Chaos erupted. Half the guards turned traitor in an instant, weapons flashing. Priests scattered, their chants collapsing into screams. Counselors fled toward hidden exits, some complicit, others simply cowards. Marcus rolled to his feet, heart hammering. He had no weapon but his hands, no shield but his body. The assassin lunged again, and Marcus met him with raw desperation, grabbing the wrist that held the blade, twisting until bones cracked. He slammed the attacker against the crystalline floor with a human grunt that echoed through the chamber. Nuttered. Another traitor rushed forward. Marcus snatched a fallen staff, swinging it like a club. Plasma blades sliced through air around him, scorching crystal walls. He fought as he always had on Earth, dirty, improvised, fueled by the refusal to die. Beside him, Elsora rose, fury igniting in her golden eyes. That. She cast aside ceremonial restraint and unleashed her true power. Energy flared from her like a storm, invisible tendrils lashing traitors with searing force. The crystal walls pulsed, amplifying her wrath. For the first time in her reign, she fought not as a symbol but as a warrior. Together, human and queen became the eye of the storm. Marcus shielded her with his own body, intercepting blows he had no business surviving. Plasma lance slashed across his side, burning through flesh. He staggered, but instead of falling, he roared a primal, guttural sound that froze even the assassins. Deathworlder instincts surged, the same stubborn refusal that had carried his kind through millennia of storms and predators. He fought with bloodied fists when the staff broke, tackled one assassin so violently that the man's head cracked. Against the crystal floor. Marcus. Ylsora's voice cut through the din as she hurled a traitor across the chamber with a blast of energy. "Stay with me," he laughed, half delirious, blood streaming from his side. "Not going anywhere." Battle dragged, brutal and raw. For every traitor that fell to Ylsora's unleashed might, another pressed in. For every assassin Marcus battered down, another blade carved across his flesh, but neither yielded. By dawn, silence fell over the citadel. Smoke and ozone choked. The air, body straighters and loyalists alike, scattered across shattered crystal floors. The one sacred chamber was now a battlefield. Ylsora stood, bruised but unbroken, her luminous form dimmed yet defiant. Marcus knelt beside her, barely conscious, his blood staining the crystal throne. He had lost too much, but his eyes still. Burned with the stubborn fire of humanity, "You should have fled," she whispered, her hand brushing his cheek, not as queen to subject, but as one soul to another. The palace that once felt like a fortress now thrummed with tension. Guards patrolled twice as often, advisors whispered in dark corners, and banners of the rival Dracorian Empire had been seen flying on ships skirting Valoria's borders. Rumors spread like wildfire. Some claimed the queen was compromised, others that a coup was imminent. Yet at the center of it all was Adrian, the human healer, who had by accident slipped his hand while tending to the queen's wound and unwittingly set this storm in motion. Adrian stood in the queen's private chambers, looking at her across the golden glow of braziers. The wound he had first treated was fully healed now, but the mark of that moment, his clumsy, all-too-human slip, had changed the course of her empire. Solara looked different too. Once encased in regal distance, she now carried herself with both strength and vulnerability. She trusted Adrian openly, though every alien custom told her she should not. "War is coming," Solara said quietly, her jeweled crown casting fractured light across her stern features. "The Dracorians see weakness in us. They know of our bond. They will use it against me." Adrian hesitated. He wasn't a soldier, not by any stretch. He had come to this world to heal, not to fight. But the queen's eyes held something unshakably, a plea that went beyond politics. It was not just her throne she fought to protect, but her people, her very survival, and the fragile thread that tied their two lives together. The council stormed into the chamber hours later, demanding his removal. The Archminister, a towering creature with ridged skin and burning amber eyes, slammed a clawed hand against the marble table. "This human cannot remain by your side, Majesty. It clouds your judgment. Already the Dracorians prepare to strike due. You not see that he is their pretext?" Solara did not flinch. "Then let them come," she said. "Because if they do, they will learn what it means to stand against a queen who is not alone." The room fell into uproar, but Adrian noticed something in her tone. It was not defiance for the council's sake, but a message to him. She was declaring him, her ally, her shield, and in some way, her equal. That night, as the sky burned with the red glow of approaching enemy ships, Adrian faced his own choice. He could leave, escape in one of the shuttles before the first bombardment, and save himself. Or he could stay, a healer with no weapon but his hands, standing beside a queen who had risked her crown and life by trusting him. When the first strike shook the palace walls, Adrian made his choice. He strode into the war chamber where Solara and her generals stood. "You want me gone?" he said to the council. "But I know things you don't. Humans don't just heal wounds. We've survived worse wars than this galaxy can imagine. I may not be your soldier, but I can show you how my people fight, how we endure." The generals sneered, but Solara nodded once, sharply. "Then do it. Show them." The battle that followed was unlike any Valoria had seen. Adrian brought with him strategies pulled from humanity's long, bloody history: ambushes, misdirection, psychological warfare. He taught the soldiers to think like predators, not prey. Where the Dracorians expected ritualized duels of honor, they were met with traps, sabotage, and relentless counterstrikes. And in the chaos, word spread. The queen fought not with aloof dignity, but with fire, standing on the front lines with the human at her side. The sight of her blade gleaming beside Adrian's bare, unarmored hands became a symbol: an alien queen and a death worlder healer, defying an empire together. When the dust settled, the Dracorian fleet limped away, broken and humiliated. Valoria had not just survived, it had changed. For the first time, they had embraced human unpredictability. It had saved them. As the people celebrated, Solara stood before her throne, but this time she beckoned Adrian to stand beside her. Gasps echoed through the hall, but she silenced them with a single look. Once, his hand slipped while healing me, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. But that slip revealed a truth greater than any law or tradition: that sometimes fate chooses for us. He is no longer just my healer. He's my ally, my partner, and the reason Valoria still stands. The court could not argue. People cheered. And Adrian, once just a human far from home, realized that a single clumsy mistake had led him to reshape the destiny of a kingdom, and perhaps the galaxy itself. Everything had changed.